Imagine that you're a video game developer and you're working on a project for many, many years. You could be someone working on the engine behind the game, you could be someone working directly on a game, like the artwork or some of the physics or the enemies, the story. And then one day it just ends. You get laid off, or half your team are laid off. Doesn't sound like a very fun experience, does it? Well, unfortunately, that appears to be a more common scenario in large publishers, as we've seen as Microsoft do more layouts and more key individuals are appearing to be leaving the company for understandable reasons, I would say. Over 20,000 individual video game developer employees have been laid off since 2022. That's staggering. That estimates to around 10% of all video game developers, particularly in the US, have been laid off. That's a 1 in 10 chance that you would be fired from the company that you work for. And it doesn't appear this trend will be stopping, as we've just seen with the Microsoft layoffs. A very large 9,000 people were laid off, with a lot of them at Xbox Game Studios, resulting in many studios and projects being cancelled, including Perfect Dark and the Res Everworld, the project I was saying that was worked on for a very long time, just gone like that. But the numbers don't really do it justice. These are individual people with creative minds and visions that result in these games being made that we love and enjoy. And so today we'll look at why laying off developers, especially senior or key figures at a company, is perhaps a bad business decision and it can have a negative impact in the long run of a video game company. So what happens when you fire a key video game developer? Besides some saving the money that you no longer have to pay them, you lose their institutional knowledge that they've gained, especially if they've been with the company a very long time. This is especially important if you work on your own proprietary tools and software. Things like your custom video game engine, that's something that is not available for the public. So when you get new employees in, they have to be trained on it, which is a very, very expensive procedure. And it's going to take them a long time to get to the point where they were the equivalent of that developer you just had, and they're able to make competent tools and functions for your new projects. One company that's really suffered is Bungie. They have lost a lot of staff, and it really is showing in the quality of their products. It is nothing like what they produced back at their prime when they were making Halo. Bungie has made a lot of layoffs recently, about 10% and more of their workforce since 2022, but this is just not really the start of their problems. Even before then, a lot of the key developers at that company are no longer with them. They started seeing issues at the time of Microsoft. If you watch the interview with Marty O'Donnell and the Act Man, he talks about how there are these kind of red flags that are emerging during those days. And over the years, we've seen the quality of Destiny 2 just go down, going from a really loved project to one that is heavily monetized and just losing interest rapidly with the player base. They've deleted and removed content. In fact, there's a recent lawsuit saying that Destiny were plagiarizing content. The developers had plagiarized some content. And because they removed and vaulted this content, they didn't have it anymore. They couldn't show it. And the court case is still going on because they couldn't get the content. They removed the content. What is happening? To which it leads us to the present day with Marathon, a game that looked very underwhelming. People played it, thought it was okay, didn't think it was anything amazing. It was another battle royale extraction shooter. Didn't have the lovely flair that Bungie's games usually have. Even in the trailers, it does say made by the studio that made Halo and Destiny. That's really not true. How many of those people are still there that worked on those games? Morale at the company is supposedly at an all-time low, which would make sense. People are saying they're not interested in your product. Seeing Destiny 2 now flounder and lose player interest, it feels like there's just not much hope. And if Marathon fails, does that mean the whole company goes down? Will Sony axe them as they've not produced anything substantial since they were purchased? On the other side, with 343 Industries, they didn't have all the Halo staff, and what they made wasn't what Bungie staff would have made. They thought Halo should have kill streaks and loadouts, something that was akin to Call of Duty, but that's not what makes Halo really. And they continued to make those mistakes in Halo 5, having a short campaign and having it more competitive because that's what they thought people wanted. When Halo Infinite came, people thought that they want a live service game. That's not really what people wanted. People wanted and loved a Halo game, custom games, Forge, stuff that just wasn't present at launch of these games, resulted in it just being unpopular. If they want to play Call of Duty, they go to Call of Duty? If they want to play Battlefield, they go to Battlefield. Why would they go to Halo trying to beat those games? That's not Halo. The start of Halo Infinite was successful. It was fun, it was enjoyable, it had potential, but then the updates never came. It was plagued with contract workers. Once those contracts ran out, there was no one there to work on the game. And if you had to hire people, then you would have to train them. Expensive, time consuming, and people were waiting for updates. Where's Forge? Where's custom games? Where's split screen? Things that really should be expected at the launch of a game, but they weren't there. Split screen get cancelled and the battle pass are lacking. The battle pass that was provided was not great. Content was locked, expensive, you couldn't cross customization, elites weren't playable, all sorts of issues. It was such a great start, but fell flat on its face, expecting people could just sit and wait for what they wanted. Nintendo didn't follow this path. They didn't lay off employees during their struggling financial time. In 2013, during the Wii U's failure, Iwata, the then CEO of the company, took a pay cut himself in order to keep his employees. The idea was, how would you improve financially if you didn't have the employees building innovative products that would sell well? And as we know now, the Switch is a massive success, and this paid off. Many key developers are still working at the company developing games. Sakurai for Super Smash Bros, Miyamoto for Zelda and Mario. They also have a very wide catalogue and creative selection of games. They don't just get their employees to make the same game every year, unlike something like Activision Blizzard. Think of the burnout that would happen and how boring it gets just working on the same kind of game and not feeling creatively free and doing something more exciting and interesting. This is why those key developers remain. They're given a choice and that they're free. They also don't make games that they don't think they're ready of. F-Zero has not had a major release since GX, that's been many years. They've said that they don't know what to do with it yet. They're not just going to make the game for the sake of it. They want to do something exciting that the fans will enjoy. Outside of Nintendo's success, where did those laid off developers go? Well, some have formed their own studios and made games like Expedition 33. There's this gap that is appearing where these AAA games and businesses are just not filling in. Because they cancel these projects and reduce development teams, they're releasing less games and are kind of resorting to remasters. When we look at Sony and all their collection of games, we've seen a lot of remasters and remakes, and we haven't seen many original projects. They were going to go for a more live service approach, but all those projects got cancelled after they saw the failures of the other ones. I think we'll see more games like Expedition 33, as the developers from those laid off companies will form their own and produce games like that. That'll be hugely successful, while these big companies continue to produce expensive and mediocre content with no real direction. They don't know what to do. How will development teams like Team 10 survive if they've been significantly reduced when it comes to the next financial round and they see that they've not produced any significant content because they've been significantly reduced in team? Are they just going to gut them? What happens to them? Are they just going to become a support team? Same goes with Call of Duty. Many of the Call of Duty staff were also laid off. How would they produce content for a very large live service game? Will the content get slower or reduce less? Will the campaigns be shorter? It seems like the rate of return is not great. Making and releasing games is complicated, and these aren't just the only reasons why their game would fail and why maybe this is not a bad idea. It could in fact be a good idea. You just never know unless you're working for that company, and they have all the numbers and statistics to perhaps back it all up. But for us, we can only look at it from the outside and assume what's happening. We can only simply buy the products or choose not to if we don't like them. I can only hope that these studios stop doing layoffs and finally settle down, making good games and keeping their employees on, and just controlling themselves, not overhiring, not going overboard, not going over budget. Find what these studios are good at making and what type of game they enjoy to make. We're beginning to see the death of live services, as projects get cancelled that were meant to be live servers. It just doesn't seem to work. Every game doesn't need to be a live service. People just want good games, and a live service game may not be the one that they want. EA thought that they could get their successful studio, BioWare, to make a live service game, Anthem. It failed. It was full of issues and bugs. Didn't have the talent or skills to make a large live service game. This didn't stop EA though. They wanted to make Dragon Age also a live service game. After many delays and key individual employees left, the project did shift focus back to a traditional single-player RPG. However, the damage was done. Those key employees were important to BioWare, and the game we got, while it wasn't dreadful, it wasn't amazing. It didn't have that BioWare Dragon Age magic like it usually does, and you could tell. It didn't have the same vision or style as the original games. But this makes sense though. The key individuals left halfway through the project, so the game didn't have the style or vision that it would do if they'd stayed there, and been given the opportunity and creative freedom to make the Dragon Age game they wanted. Some people are asking or predicting for a large video game crash, as all these live service failures and layoffs will result in the industry just not coming back to its peak and resulting in a massive decline in sales. I don't think this will happen though. Instead, I think we may see a redirection. The large publishers will probably look at these smaller games like Expedition 33 and maybe want to try and recapture that, building a game on a smaller budget that makes a lot of profit. Not every game made needs to be $80 and be a multi-million-dollar project. Having smaller projects will also help keep those developers on. A shorter development time, letting them have a bit more creative freedom rather than make these largely huge, expansive video games that must be hugely successful in order to make a profit. But I think that covers everything for now. And there'll be more drama in the future, I imagine, and there'll be more scenarios and issues that will happen. If you did enjoy this video, then do like it and subscribe to my channel for more discussion topics like this. And also comment what you thought, even if you have your own personal experience. Maybe you worked in the game industry and saw key individuals leave, or you're in software development in general, and you saw the company kind of just fall out as the new vision just didn't really match and it caused all sorts of issues. I'll see you in the next and future videos if you stay along.